I deleted 247 messages before he woke up. Every morning for 11 months. My husband slept on my side of the bed because he said it smelled like me. He'd pull my pillow close and breathe in deep, even in his sleep, like I was something worth holding on to. I watched him do it that last morning, lying there with his face buried in my pillow, his wedding ring catching the early light coming through the blinds, and I stood in the bathroom doorway, phone in hand, deleting everything. Again, his name was Daniel, my husband, not the other one. Daniel was the kind of man your mother prays you'll find. 6'1", broad shoulders, quiet hands. He was a firefighter for Station 12 in our town just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. He'd been doing it for 9 years. Every time he walked out the door for a 48-hour shift, he kissed me on the forehead. Not the lips, the forehead, like I was something precious, something sacred. He made $104,000 a year with overtime. Not a fortune, but in North Carolina that bought us a 4-bedroom house on a cul-de-sac in a neighborhood called Whispering Oaks. White siding, black shutters, a 2-car garage, a yard big enough for our golden retriever Benny to sprint laps around the oak tree out back. We had a Weber grill on the patio that Daniel seasoned like it was a cast iron skillet. He took it seriously. He took everything seriously. We'd been married for 7 years, together for 10, high school sweethearts, prom king and queen, the whole small town fairy tale. People in our neighborhood called us the couple, like we were the standard everyone else measured their marriage against. Daniel coached Little League on Saturdays, not because we had kids, we were trying. 3 rounds of IVF, $14,000 each time. He coached because he loved kids and because he believed it would happen for us eventually. He never once blamed me, not once. Even after the 3rd round failed and I locked myself in the bathroom for 2 hours crying on the tile floor, he sat outside the door the entire time. Didn't knock, didn't push, just sat there with his back against the wood and said, "I'm right here, Jen. I'm not going anywhere." That was Daniel, and I destroyed him. It started at Target. I know how that sounds. Nobody expects their marriage to end because of a Tuesday afternoon at Target. But that's where I met Ryan. He was in the candle aisle, the one near the back, past the home decor, where they keep the Threshold brand stuff. I was smelling a cedar and vanilla candle when I heard someone say, "That one smells like a pottery barn threw up on a campfire." I laughed before I even turned around. And when I did, there was this guy, mid-30s, dark hair, stubble that looked intentional. He was holding a basket with paper towels and a 6-pack of Blue Moon. He smiled at me like he'd known me for years. "Sorry," he said. "I have opinions about candles." "Clearly," I said. And that was it. That was the beginning. We talked for maybe 10 minutes in that aisle. He was funny. Not Daniel funny. Daniel's humor was dry, understated, the kind you had to catch. Ryan was loud, confident, the kind of funny that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He told me he'd just moved to Charlotte from Austin, worked in pharmaceutical sales, drove a black Audi, lived alone in an apartment in South End. He didn't ask for my number. I gave it to him. I told myself it was nothing, just being friendly, sudden hospitality. "That's what we do here," he texted me that night. While Daniel was grilling chicken thighs on the Weber and telling me about a kid on his Little League team who finally hit a ball off the tee for the first time. Daniel was beaming, genuinely happy about a 5-year-old's accomplishment. And I was under the patio table, angling my phone away from him, reading a text from a stranger that said, "For the record, I went with the cedar vanilla." I should have deleted it right there. I should have blocked the number and gone inside and kissed my husband and been grateful for what I had. But I didn't. I typed back a smiley face, and that smiley face cost me everything. The texting went on for 3 weeks before we met in person again. I told myself it was harmless, just conversation, just someone to talk to during the long stretches when Daniel was on shift and the house was too quiet and Benny was asleep on the couch. And I was sitting there with a glass of barefoot Moscato, watching Selling Sunset reruns, feeling like the walls were closing in. My best friend, Kayla, almost caught it early. We were at brunch, mimosa Sundays at a place in Dilworth with the girls. My phone buzzed and I smiled before I could stop myself. Kayla looked at me over her avocado toast and said, "Who's got you smiling like that?" I said, "Daniel. He's being sweet." She nodded and went back to her eggs. But that was the first lie I told out loud to someone who wasn't my husband. The first time I chose to protect the secret instead of myself. And it was so easy. Terrifyingly easy. I started being more careful after that. I turned off message previews on my lock screen. I changed Ryan's name in my contacts to Dr. Williams, so if Daniel ever glanced at my phone, it looked like a doctor's office. I created a separate photo album with a passcode. I downloaded Signal because the messages disappear. I did all of this in one afternoon, sitting in the Chick-fil-A parking lot, eating a spicy deluxe sandwich like I wasn't engineering the destruction of my own marriage between bites of waffle fries. That's not an excuse. I know it's not, but I need you to understand something. I wasn't unhappy with Daniel. I was unhappy with myself. 3 failed IVF rounds. 32 years old and my body couldn't do the one thing it was supposed to do. I felt broken, defective. And Daniel, God bless him, he never made me feel that way. But his patience, his kindness, his constant reassurance, it started to feel like pity, like he was staying out of obligation, like he looked at me and saw a project, not a wife. That wasn't true. I know that now. But I convinced myself it was true because I needed a reason. You can't do what I did without a reason, even a fake one. The first time I met Ryan for coffee was on a Wednesday. Daniel was on shift. I drove to a cafe in Noda, the arts district in Charlotte, 20 minutes from our neighborhood. Far enough that nobody would see me. I wore jeans and a top I'd bought at Nordstrom Rack the week before. I did my makeup in the car. I told myself I was just meeting a friend. Ryan was already there when I arrived. He stood up when he saw me, pulled out my chair, ordered me a lavender latte without asking, then said, "If you hate it, I'll drink it and we'll pretend this never happened." I didn't hate it. We talked for 2 hours. He asked me questions Daniel never asked. Not because Daniel didn't care, but because Daniel already knew everything about me. There was nothing left to discover. Ryan was discovering me for the first time. And there's something intoxicating about being new to someone, about watching their eyes light up when you tell a story they've never heard, about feeling like a mystery again instead of a certainty. I drove home that afternoon with the windows down, singing along to the radio, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Alive, electric, guilty. The guilt lasted about 2 days. Then it faded. That's the thing nobody tells you about cheating. The guilt doesn't stay sharp, it dulls. It becomes background noise, like a smoke detector with a low battery. You hear it at first, then you stop hearing it. Then you forget it's even there. The coffee dates became lunches. The lunches became longer. We'd sit in his Audi in the parking lot after talking, and one day he reached over and put his hand on my knee. I didn't move it. I didn't want to. The first time I kissed him was in that car. It was a Thursday, 4:17 in the afternoon. I remember because I had to be home by 5:30 to let Benny out, and Daniel was getting off shift at 6. I remember looking at the clock on the dashboard and calculating exactly how many minutes of sin I could afford. I drove home and Daniel was already there, early. He'd stopped at Harris Teeter on the way and bought flowers. Yellow roses, my favorite. He was standing in the kitchen arranging them in a vase, still in his uniform, smelling like smoke and sweat, grinning like a kid who'd brought home a good report card. "Thought you could use these?" he said. I hugged him so he couldn't see my face, because if he'd seen my face, he would have known. That night, we went to our neighbor's house, the Millers. They hosted Friday night game nights, Settlers of Catan, homemade chili, Bud Light and koozies with their family name printed on them, the whole suburban package. Daniel loved those nights. He'd get competitive about the board game and high-five Kevin Miller when he won and help clean up the kitchen without being asked. I sat on their leather sectional that night watching Daniel laugh with Kevin, and I thought, I kissed another man 4 hours ago, and now I'm eating chili in my neighbor's living room pretending to care about longest road bonuses. The dissonance should have killed me. It didn't. I just got better at holding two realities in my head at the same time. Wife Jen. And the other one, Thanksgiving was the hardest. Daniel's family came to our house. His parents drove up from Greenville. His brother flew in from Denver. I cooked a 22-pound turkey because Daniel's mother always judged the size. I made her sweet potato casserole recipe because it was tradition. I set the table with the good china we got as a wedding gift from his aunt. And when Daniel's father said grace and thanked God for family and for love, Daniel squeezed my hand under the table, and I squeezed back, and I tasted bile in my throat. Ryan texted me during dessert. "Missing you today." I read it in the bathroom between the pumpkin pie and the pecan, standing over the toilet, in case the guilt finally made me physically sick. It didn't. I texted back a heart emoji and flushed the toilet so it sounded like I had a reason to be in there. Daniel's mother pulled me aside while we were doing dishes. She held my hands and looked me in the eyes and said, "Jennifer, I want you to know how grateful I am that Danny found you. You make him so happy." I said thank you and smiled and dried a plate and didn't cry until she went to bed. The affair lasted 11 months. I won't give you every detail because the details don't matter as much as you think. What matters is what I became during those 11 months. I became a liar. Not a casual liar, a professional one. I created a fake email for a fake book club every Thursday night. Book club. Daniel never questioned it. He'd kiss me goodbye, hand me a thermos of coffee for the drive, and tell me to have fun. I'd drive to Ryan's apartment in South End, and I wouldn't come home until 11. I bought a second phone, a prepaid one from Walmart, $49. I kept it in a tampon box in the bathroom cabinet because I knew Daniel would never look there. Every night, after he fell asleep, I'd take it out and text Ryan in the dark. Then I'd put it back, brush my teeth again to get the taste of guilt out of my mouth, and climb into bed next to the best man I'd ever known. I lied about working late, about meeting girlfriends for brunch, about errands at Costco that took 3 hours, about traffic, about headaches, about being too tired for intimacy, about everything. And Daniel believed all of it, every single time. Not because he was stupid. Daniel wasn't stupid. He believed me because he loved me. Because it never occurred to him that the woman he'd built his life with, the woman he sat outside the bathroom door for, the woman he spent $42,000 trying to have a baby with. It never occurred to him that she would look him in the eye every single day and lie. Trust isn't a weakness. I know that now, but I treated it like it was. I exploited the most beautiful thing about him and used it as a weapon against him. The thing about lies is they require maintenance, like a house. You can't just build them and walk away. You have to patch the cracks, replace the beams, keep the foundation from shifting. And the longer the lie lasts, the more maintenance it needs. I started losing track. Small things. I told Daniel I was at Sarah's house one Thursday, but Sarah had posted on Facebook that she was in Myrtle Beach. He didn't see the post, but I panicked for 3 days straight, refreshing his Facebook every hour to make sure he hadn't scrolled past it. I forgot to delete a Venmo payment, $62 to a restaurant in South End. Daniel saw it on our joint account statement. I told him it was a work lunch. He nodded, but he looked at me for a beat too long, just one beat, and my heart nearly stopped. There was a worse one. A Saturday in September. Daniel and I were at Lowe's buying mulch for the flower beds, his project. He loved yard work, found it meditative. We were loading bags into the truck when my burner phone rang, in my purse, with a different ringtone than my regular phone. Daniel paused mid-lift and looked at me. "That's not your usual ring," I said. "Oh, that's my work phone. New system." He said, "Since when do you have a work phone?" And I said, "Since last month, they issued them to the whole department." And he said, "Huh," and went back to loading mulch. But he said, "Huh," in a way that made me not sleep for 2 nights. I started leaving the burner phone in the car after that. Then I started leaving it at the office. Then I realized I was building an entire infrastructure of lies, and each new lie required 3 more lies to support it. And the whole thing was a house of cards balanced on a foundation of sand. And I kept building anyway because stopping meant looking down. I wore a perfume Ryan had given me, Le Labo Santal, $192 a bottle. I sprayed it on my wrist one morning without thinking, and Daniel leaned in to kiss me goodbye and paused. "New perfume?" he asked. "Got a sample at Sephora," I said. He smiled. "It smells nice." And I felt the floor drop out from under me because for 3 seconds I thought it was over. Christmas nearly ended it too. We were at his parents' house in Greenville, opening presents around the tree. Daniel gave me a necklace, a small gold pendant with our wedding date engraved on the back. He put it on me himself, his big hands gentle with the tiny clasp, and he said, 7 years. Best 7 years of my life. His mother cried. His father patted him on the back. And I sat there wearing a necklace from my husband, while the man I was sleeping with had sent me a text that morning that said, "Wish you were here instead." I wore that necklace every day. To Ryan's apartment, to our lunches, to every lie. It hung against my chest like a tiny golden accusation, and I never took it off. I don't know why. Maybe because wearing it was the only honest thing I still did. Maybe because it was the closest I could get to telling the truth without actually saying the words. It wasn't, not yet. The cracks got wider. My anxiety was constant. I lost 11 pounds in 2 months. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus. I started taking half a Xanax before bed just to quiet the noise in my head. Daniel noticed the weight loss. He thought it was the IVF grief. He suggested therapy. He said he'd go with me, couples counseling, whatever I needed. I said no. I said I was fine. I said I just needed time. What I needed was to stop, but I couldn't, or I wouldn't. I don't know the difference anymore. Ryan started getting impatient. He wanted more. He wanted me to leave Daniel. He'd say things like, "You deserve someone who sees you, really sees you." As if Daniel didn't see me. As if Daniel hadn't spent 10 years memorizing every version of me and loving each one. But Ryan said it with those dark eyes and that confidence, and I believed him because believing him was easier than facing what I was doing. On a Sunday in October, Daniel came home from a 24-hour shift and found me on the couch watching football, his team, the Panthers. He collapsed beside me, exhausted, and pulled me into his chest. He smelled like the station, like industrial soap and coffee and something burnt. He fell asleep in 4 minutes with his arm around me and his face in my hair. I lay there for an hour, not moving, not breathing, just feeling his heartbeat against my back, slow, steady, trusting. And I thought about Ryan's apartment, about the sheets I'd been in 12 hours ago, about the messages on the burner phone 6 inches above Daniel's head in the cabinet. I cried, silently, so he wouldn't wake up. I should have ended it then. That should have been the moment. But I didn't, because people like me don't stop when they should. We stop when we're caught. It happened on a Tuesday, November 14th. I know the exact date because it's burned into my memory like a scar. Daniel had the day off. He was doing laundry, something he always did without being asked. He was the kind of man who rotated the laundry, cleaned the gutters, changed the oil in my car, and never once called it helping. He just did it. Because it was his home too. He was sorting whites and colors on the bedroom floor when my jacket fell off the hanger in the closet. My black North Face. The one I wore to Ryan's apartment because it didn't hold perfume the way my wool coat did. The burner phone fell out of the pocket. It hit the hardwood floor with a sound that I heard from the kitchen. A small plastic clatter. Nothing dramatic. The quietest sound that ever ended a marriage. I froze at the kitchen counter. The house went silent. No footsteps, no washing machine, no music from the bedroom where Daniel always played classic rock while he folded clothes. Just silence. Then I heard him pick it up. I don't know how long he looked at it before I walked in. Maybe 30 seconds, maybe 5 minutes. Time stopped working. When I reached the bedroom doorway, Daniel was sitting on the edge of our bed. The burner phone was open in his hands. He was reading the messages. He didn't look up. I stood there. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I watched his face, and what I saw was worse than anger, worse than screaming, worse than anything I'd prepared myself for. His face was blank, empty, like someone had reached inside him and turned off every light. His eyes moved across the screen, but they weren't reading anymore. They were just moving, like a machine running after the power's been cut. "Daniel," I whispered. He didn't respond. "Daniel, please, let me explain." He looked up, and I will never forget his eyes. They were wet, but he wasn't crying. The tears were just there, like his body was grieving before his mind had caught up. He looked at me the way you look at someone you thought you knew, but realized you never did. Like I was a stranger who had broken into his house and put on his wife's clothes. "How long?" he said. His voice was flat. No anger, no volume, just 2 words. "Daniel?" "How long, Jen?" 11 months. He nodded. Once. Slow. Like the number made perfect sense. Like it was exactly what he expected. Then he set the phone down on the bed very carefully, like it was something fragile, and he stood up. He walked past me. Like it was something. I reached for his arm and he pulled away. Not violently, not dramatically. He just moved. Like my touch was something he couldn't tolerate anymore. Like my hand on his skin was a foreign object. He went downstairs. I heard him open the whole closet. I heard a duffel bag being pulled from the shelf. I heard drawers opening and closing, methodical, calm. The sounds of a man who'd made his decision before he even stood up from the bed. I followed him down. He was packing jeans, t-shirts, his station uniform, his toothbrush, Benny's leash. "Where are you going?" I asked. "My brother's." "Daniel, please, we can talk about this. We can go to counseling. We can..." He stopped. He turned and looked at me. And for 1 second, I saw it. The pain. The absolute devastation behind the blankness. It flashed across his face like lightning, and then it was gone, buried under something harder, something permanent. "You deleted messages every morning," he said, "while I was sleeping." It wasn't a question. "I bought you flowers that day. The yellow roses, you remember?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I bought them because I knew you were hurting. From the IVF, from everything, I wanted you to know I was still here, that I'd always be here." He paused. "I came home early that day. Do you remember? I stopped at a Harris Teeter. I was so excited to surprise you." His voice cracked. Just once. Just slightly. Then he pulled it back. "You hugged me so I couldn't see your face." He picked up the duffel bag. "I thought it was because you were happy." He whistled for Benny. The dog came running, tail wagging, oblivious to the fact that his family was ending. Daniel clipped the leash on, picked up his bag, and walked to the front door. He stopped with his hand on the knob. He didn't turn around. "I would have done anything for you, Jen. Anything." The door closed. Not a slam. A click. The quietest sound. The same sound as the phone hitting the floor. Quietest sound. My life ending in whispers, not screams. I stood in the hallway for I don't know how long. 5 minutes. An hour. The house was so quiet I could hear the ice maker in the kitchen dropping cubes. I could hear the neighbor's sprinkler system turning on. I could hear my own heartbeat and I hated it. I hated that my body kept working like nothing had happened. I sank to the floor, right there in the hallway, and I didn't move until the sun went down and the house went dark around me. Daniel filed for divorce 11 days later. He didn't contest anything, didn't fight over the house, didn't try to take more than his share. His lawyer sent a single letter. Clean, simple, fair. That's who he was, even in the worst moment of his life. Fair. I called him 31 times in those 11 days. He answered once. The conversation lasted 9 seconds. He said, "Please stop calling Jen. There's nothing left to say." And he hung up. I texted him pages, paragraphs, apologies, explanations, promises, begging. Every message delivered, none of them read. The blue check marks never appeared. He'd either blocked me or he was doing something worse. He was choosing not to read them, choosing to let me sit in the silence I'd created. I called Ryan twice. The first time he answered and said, "This is getting complicated." The second time he didn't pick up. A week later, his number was disconnected. He'd moved on, probably to the next married woman in the next Target candle aisle. I was nothing to him. I'd blown up my entire life for a man who changed his phone number when things got inconvenient. The divorce was finalized in February. Daniel got Benny. That hurt more than the house, more than the bank accounts, more than anything, because Benny didn't understand. Benny just knew that one day his family was together and the next day half of it was gone. I kept the house. I couldn't afford it alone on my salary as a marketing coordinator. The mortgage was $2,200 a month. Daniel had been paying most of it. Without his income, I was drowning within 60 days. I maxed out a credit card, then another. I sold it 4 months later at a loss because the housing market had softened and I didn't have time to wait. Walked away with $11,000 from a house we'd put $60,000 into. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment near Uptown, 790 square feet, the kind with thin walls and a parking lot view. I could hear my neighbor's television through the drywall every night. Grey's Anatomy reruns until midnight. Every night. I stopped going to Target, not just because of Ryan, because Target was where Daniel and I used to go on Sunday mornings. We'd get Starbucks from the one inside the store and wander the aisles for an hour looking at things we didn't need. Throw pillows, kitchen gadgets, dog toys for Benny. It was our thing, our boring, beautiful, taken for granted thing. I stopped going to the neighborhood, to the Millers' game nights, to the cul-de-sac 4th of July party where Daniel always manned the grill and organized the fireworks for the kids. I stopped going to Station 12's annual pancake breakfast fundraiser where Daniel would wear the apron that said "World's Okayest Chef" and flip pancakes for 3 hours straight with a grin that never faded. I stopped going to Harris Teeter because every time I walked past the flower section, I saw yellow roses and my chest would seize up like someone had reached inside and squeezed. I stopped going to the places where people knew us, knew me, because the looks were unbearable, not angry looks, worse, pitying looks, the kind that said, "We always thought she was so lucky." And from the women, a different look, a colder one, the kind that said, "We always knew she didn't deserve him." Kella tried. She really did. She called me every day for the first month, brought over wine, sat on my apartment floor while I cried. But one night, after her third glass of Pinot, she said, "Jen, I have to ask, why? Why him? Why Ryan? He's not even that good looking." And I couldn't answer, because there was no good answer. There never had been. Kayla stopped calling after a while, not because she didn't care, because being friends with me became a liability. The other women in our circle had chosen Daniel's side, quietly but completely. Birthday party invitations stopped coming. Group chat messages went unanswered. Baby shower invites that I used to help plan, I wasn't even on the list anymore. I became a ghost in my own life. I was lucky. I just didn't know it until I wasn't. Daniel transferred to a station across the county. I heard from a mutual friend that he moved into a small house near Lake Norman. He still coaches Little League. He got a second dog, a rescue, named her Penny. He never remarried. Not as of the last time I asked. And I hate that I still ask. I hate that I still drive past Station 12 sometimes on my way home from work, even though he hasn't worked there in 2 years. I hate that I still have his yellow rose dried in a book on my nightstand. I hate that I still sleep on his side of the bed because it doesn't smell like him anymore, but I pretend it does. I'm 34 now. I live alone. I work. I come home. I eat dinner standing at the kitchen counter because sitting at a table for one feels like a punishment I deserve. I don't date. Not because I can't, because every man I meet, I compare to Daniel, and every single one falls short, including Ryan, especially Ryan. My mother told me I'd move on, that time heals, that I'd find someone new and build something better. She means well, but she's wrong. Some things don't heal, some things you carry, not because you want to, but because you should. Because the weight is the only honest thing you have left. I think about him every day. Not the way you think about an ex, the way you think about a car accident you caused. The moments of impact replaying over and over. The sound of the phone hitting the hardwood floor. The silence in the bedroom. His eyes. The click of the front door. 247 messages every morning. For 11 months, he was right there, sleeping beside me, holding my pillow, breathing me in. And I chose someone else. I don't expect sympathy. I don't deserve it. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this because someone should know what it costs. Not what cheating costs the person who gets cheated on. Everyone tells that story. The betrayed husband, the broken heart, the hero who rebuilds. No one tells the other story. The one where you're the villain. The one where you had everything and traded it for nothing. The one where you sit alone in a one-bedroom apartment at 2 a.m, staring at a dried yellow rose, knowing that the best person you'll ever meet loved you more than you'll ever be loved again. And you threw it away in a Target parking lot, over a candle,